Hi, this is Bennett Brown. I'm an average disc golfer. I've been playing since 2021. On most holes, I can throw between 300 and 350 feet. My max distance throw, I think, was about 415 feet, 430 feet downhill. So I would say usually I'm getting between 300 and 350 with my distance throws. These are the ones that I throw with and putt with. So for putting, I use the Clutch by Legacy Discs. This is the only disc that I use from Legacy Discs. My wife actually picked it out initially when we started, and it's really nice. It has this little ridge here, and that's good to have for when you're putting. So I usually like to rest my hand there and do a spin and push kind of putt. And the flight numbers are 2301, pretty straight putter. That's my putting putter. For throwing putters, I like to use the soft Nomad. This is the James Conrad World Championship Electron Soft edition. I like throwing pink discs, so you'll see a lot of pink and blue because they kind of stand out in nature. And so this is the first pink one. It's pretty beat up, the edges are beat up, and it's warped on top. So I don't mind it because there's kind of like spots that fit your thumb really nicely. Like right here is a good spot, and it like perfectly fits where I'd place my thumb. And I usually use this for like a nice soft touch approach shot somewhere outside of circle 2. So probably from 100 feet to 180 feet, maybe 200 feet. I'll use this for a nice floaty upshot, the Nomad. For shots that are a little bit further away, like 200 feet approach shots, I use the soft Envy in the Neutron Plastic. This one is a little bit gummy and a little more overstable than the Electron Plastic for the Envy, but I do enjoy it a lot. It still has some stability and honestly flies more like a mid-range than a putter, because you can get some really good distance with that, with this disc. Probably close to 300 feet if you really mash it. But for most of these shots, I'm throwing it 250 feet and in for an approach shot. And then for the overstable putter slot, I use the RPro Pig. This is the older one that has the 3-speed. They're now classified as a 4-speed putter mid-range approach disc. And the RPro Plastic is kind of nice because it beats in where you can kind of wear them into different stages of flight. So this one I would say is like middle worn in, so it still has some stability, but it's a little straighter than a brand new one. So I like this for short forehand approaches, sometimes backhand if it's really windy and I don't want it to fly past the basket. I'll use this for some backhand approaches, but for the most part I'm using this for soft chip up shots, probably under 200 feet. Anything more than 200 feet for the forehand approach shot, I'm going with my Zone, which is more overstable, and also it takes more torque, so I can put more power into it and not be afraid that it'll flip over. Whereas the Pig, if you throw it really hard, you have a chance to turn it over, and that'll kind of mess up your shots. For my understable mid-range, I have the Soul in ESP Plastic, and this is a swirly one. It has the cool 2023 Ledgestone edition stamp on it. I honestly don't throw this too much here in Texas because it's so windy, but when I played a lot in Virginia, I would use an understable mid-range every single round I played multiple times. Whereas in Texas, I'm mostly throwing fairway drivers and distance drivers. But in wooded courses, this thing is awesome. Throwing uphill, having that flip to it is great. But yeah, I don't really throw the Soul too much in Texas, but I think if I go and play somewhere else where it's not as windy and wooded, this is a great disc to have to flip up and fly straight. For the next step, I have a rock in DX Plastic, and it's got the stamp on the bottom. This one's pretty chunked up because I've had it in the bag for probably a year and a half or 2 years, which is a pretty long time for DX plastic because it gets beat up pretty fast. But this one is kind of a bread and butter disc. It's straight to a little bit of turn because it's beat up. Normally it's 4403 for flight numbers, which aren't really true for the rock, but you know, it's mostly a straight disc with some stability at the end. But the DX rock is one of my favorite discs. I throw it all the time, especially when I'm afraid I'm gonna lose a disc in the water or by a hazard. I'm not afraid to lose a rock because it's so easy to replace them with another rock. And so that's why I have a second one, that if anything happened to that one, I can replace it with this one. Now, this rock is also DX, 180 grams max weight, but what's different about it is that it is a flat top rock. So this one has a little bit of dome, not too much, the blue one, and the yellow one is flat top, which I think is supposed to be better for the wind, flies, you know, kind of straighter out of the box. But I like the shallow feel to it compared to your normal rock, and it's a beautiful flyer, just like all rocks are. Another disc that's sort of similar is the Hex. This is the special Overthrow disc golf stamp that they made, so that's why it says rune, because they're not allowed to use the same word as the actual disc. But I love this stamp, a cat. It's kind of a fun cat. And I actually have my longest throw-in with this of 210 feet. It was on like a 500 to 600 foot hole here in Texas, and I just threw an absolute laser with it. So if you want a disc that flies straight and goes really far, the Hex by Axiom is awesome, and I love the color of the blue and the pink together. Like I said, those are some of my favorite colors for discs because it makes it easy to find. So the Hex, awesome disc. And then my last mid-range is the Pyro. I believe this is the Prism Pyro. It's got good grip, and this is one of the more overstable mid-ranges that you could get. So if you need one to dump really hard at the end, the Pyro you can rely on. It'll pretty much never flip over on you unless you threw it on anhyzer with some wind. So really stable disc, really overstable. And the other thing that's kind of great about it too is if for some reason I lost my zone during a round, this could kind of substitute that overstable approach shot. It really feels good on a forehand, and it has that overstability that it kind of keeps it with the torque and everything. And it also has a unique rim to it where the lip at the top kind of jets out. So it does feel a little bit different, so I feel like you need to actually get it in your hands and see it for yourself on whether or not you'd like it. But the Pyro is absolutely amazing, flies great, and I use it a ton in Texas because it helps with the wind. So that's all of my mid-ranges. Let's move on to fairway drivers, which I have a lot of, and then we'll go on to the distance drivers. So for fairways, I'm gonna start with the 6 and 7 speeds and then move on to the 9 speeds. So for most understable, which this is a new addition to my bag, is the MVP Signal. It's a flippy fairway driver, kind of like a mid-range flippy as well. I haven't really used it a lot here in Texas, but I think for the woods this would be great on really long approach shots. You know, you could use it if you need to weave through the woods. Like I said, I haven't really thrown it a lot. I'm still getting used to the Signal. New addition to the bag, but I needed an understable driver slot in my bag because I don't have any until I get to my 11 speeds for flippy drivers. So that's the Signal MVP. The next disc up in stability is the Crave. And this particular Crave is pretty much my most precious disc, not because there's anything special about it, but it's the one that I'm most familiar with. I've probably thrown this disc 500 times. I'm so used to how it flies. It flies a little bit more understable than your typical Crave because it is lighter weight. It's 168 grams, which is kind of the sweet spot I have for Craves. I like them at around 170. And these things will go really far and really straight. So that makes them really versatile, because you could use this on a hole that's 250 feet, or you could get it to a hole that's 340, 330 feet. So this covers a lot of range and covers most disc golf holes on a ton of courses. So if there's one disc that I would be kind of sad if I lost, it'd be the Crave. And this particular one, because I've been throwing it for so many years, I know that it's gonna fly straight, turn a little bit, and it doesn't even really fade. It just like keeps penetrating forward at the end of its flight. Great for low ceiling drives, great for open shots if it's not too windy. So Crave, awesome disc. I have a second Crave. This is a soft neutron plastic. I'm working this one in to possibly replace the blue one if I ever lost it, but haven't really thrown it that much, but it's also a Crave, great disc. Then I've got a Servo, which is also similar to a Crave. It flies pretty much the same flight pattern. It just has a little more fade at the end. Not any crazy fade, but it's basically a Crave. If it's windy and you know the Crave will flip over, then you could use this, and it still might flip over, but there's less likely of a chance, and it's great for wooded holes as well. So that's a Servo. This is a Greg Barsby Eagle. I believe this is the 2022 or 2023. I could be wrong. But I like the way these feel, the way they look. These kind of like swirly star eagles have a little bit of fade at the end. So if you need reliability, an Eagle is one of the best discs that you can get. I think like you can't go wrong with an Eagle or a T-Bird in your bag. So highly recommend this disc. I use it on and off depending on how I'm feeling. But yeah, I love the Eagle. And my last kind of 6 or 7 speed disc is the Resistor by MVP. This disc is awesome for forehand and backhand for approach shots that are longer, 250, 300 feet. It doesn't really fly super far for me because you have to put a lot of power into it. I feel like the glide on it is lower. It says it's 4 glide, which might be true, but it's pretty overstable. So I would say it's comparable to a Firebird by Innova or MVP Fireball. Pretty overstable, great for fading super hard. You can sometimes get some skips with them at the end. So the Resistor is a great disc, and if you need an overstable fairway driver, this is one of the best that you can get and feels great on the forehand, like I said. All right, the last 3 fairway drivers. These are ones that sometimes I throw, sometimes I don't, but I have the FX3. This is the only Prodigy disc I have in the bag. It was recommended by one of the warehouse guys at Foundation Disc Golf in Lynchburg. They were like, oh, it's a good disc for forehand and backhand. I don't really use it for forehand at all, but if you need something that can go like 320 to 350 feet straight, kind of like a longer Crave, the FX3 is a great option. The plastic feels pretty good. I know people like to kind of crap on Prodigy discs, but it feels really good to me. And I've used it on and off over the years. It's similar to a Innova Valkyrie or another straight 9-speed with a decent amount of glide. In a similar slot to that, I have the MVP Trail. Flies super straight, can go really far. I'm just now working it into my bag, so don't have a ton of experience with it, but every throw I've had with it so far, which has been about 10 to 20 throws, has been pretty solid, nice and straight, not a lot of fade, not a lot of turn, just super straight trail. Cool disc, James Conrad. And then one of the most famous disc in disc golf, the Inova Firebird, your classic star Firebird. I've lost this one once or twice. I lost it at Independence Park in Bedford, Virginia, in the lake. I think it was on hole 18. I just threw it right in the drain. But this disc has been in my bag pretty much since I started playing disc golf. And this Star Plastic is super grippy, so I love that, because Star Plastic sometimes is hard, or you find different variations of Star Plastic, but this one feels awesome. It's pretty beat up, but still has its stability, and it's perfect for forehand and backhand approaches, 250 to 280. This thing, a staple in the bag of pretty much all Innova pros. All right, let's wrap this up with the distance drivers. So most understable, I have 2 factory second turns. These are both in Halo Star plastic, and they're 150 grams. So they're super lightweight, they're pretty understable, but I absolutely love them, and I can get these close to 400 feet. Not every throw I can get that far, but if I need a max distance throw, especially with a tailwind, these things are awesome. They feel super great. Don't be afraid to try out a lightweight driver, because it can really help you. You don't have to put as much effort into it, but you can still get that distance that you're looking for on a lot of holes. So I have 2 Halo Star turns. These are great. The next disc that is also understable and straight at the same time is the Thrasher. This is a Z-line Thrasher by Discraft. 12.5, -3.2 are the numbers. And for me, I have like average arm speed, probably throwing between 50 and 60 miles an hour on my backhand drives. Probably closer to 50 on most days, because I usually don't throw max power. But this disc has consistently gone the furthest for me. For the last like 2 years, I can get it between 330 feet to about 415 feet, depending on the day. But if you want a disc that goes super far, get the Thrasher. I think it feels absolutely amazing. It's a 12 speed that feels like an 11 speed, because I don't actually have any 12 speeds in my bag, because I feel like I have normal to slightly smaller hands. So these feel great, kind of shallow, and they absolutely bomb. So highly recommend a Discraft Thrasher. These 2 discs kind of fill a similar slot in my bag. This is my stable to overstable drivers. So the Skyway by Climo disc, Ken Climo. This is the prototype one, and the plastic on this is some of the best feeling plastic I've ever had in my hand. It feels grippy, but not too soft, not too hard, and you can really dig your thumb into the flight plate to get good grip. It's got a little bit of swirl to it, and the pink is just awesome. It stands out super well. It doesn't fade like Innova pink does. If you're familiar with some of their discs, the pink will just fade, or the orange and other colors, but this is held up really nicely. It's similar to a Wraith, and yeah, that's my kind of stable distance driver. And my last disc is a Grace. This one is Throjo's dyed, and this thing looks absolutely amazing when it flies. It looks like a candy cane just rotating out there. It's one of the coolest looking discs. Sometimes I just throw it, not because it's the right disc, but because it looks so cool when it flies. So if you can dye a disc, try dyeing it like this, because it will look absolutely amazing in the sky. But yeah, this, the flight numbers are 11.6, -1.2, and I feel like mine is not like as flippy as maybe others are, or maybe it's just I need to throw it some more, but this is kind of my stable to overstable driver slot, and it's worked out well for me. I pull it out every now and then, and if there's a lot of wind, it can fight the wind. Maybe I have a special version of the Grace that is just more overstable, but it works out well for me. So yeah, that's pretty much all the discs in my bag. I have one of these disc retrievers. Highly recommend this if you live in a place that has cacti or steep cliffs that you don't want to fall down. This has probably pulled like 200 discs out of weird places for me over the last year of having it. I also have this disc raptor for cleaning discs. So you just put it right here, you rotate it, and it cleans the dirt right off your discs. Let's see. I have a rangefinder. I love that I have this, but I don't always pull it out. I probably have used it a few times this year, but depending on the course, It can be helpful to have a rangefinder. I've got a lacrosse ball in here for if I need to get a disc out of a tree that I can't reach with the disc retriever. I'll chuck the lacrosse ball at it, and this is better than throwing rocks because rocks can get stuck in a tree and fall and hit somebody, or it could bounce back and hit yourself. So getting hit by a lacrosse ball is a lot better than being hit by a rock. So I carry one of these, and I'm not talking about the disc, I'm talking about actual rocks. And then I've got a couple mini markers, Foundation Disc Golf one and a PDGA one. I've got a scorecard, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, thanks for watching my In the Bag. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is by Renew Disc Golf. They make disc golf bags out of old billboards, and I've had this for a couple years now. It's held up fairly well. The only thing that's fallen apart are these arms, but other than that, it's a pretty good bag. And yeah, so hope you enjoyed my In the Bag, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.